mother says he was a normal, happy boy until he became obsessed with black metal music.
Rock and roll!
Sounds like Christian Rick.
Heavy metal music. Groups promote satanic worship.
They're anti-peace and anti-life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Metal Face podcast, where each week we discuss free metal albums. My name is Ben, and joining me I have Tom. Tom, say hello.
Hello, Ben.
Also joining us, of course, we have Josh.
Hello, Ben. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Josh.
So this week we'll be talking about Headstrung by Rash Decision, Thousands of Evils by Vildhjarta, and Black Age Blues by Goatsnake.
Nice.
Cool.
Before we get to all that, Josh, I understand there's something that you wanted to discuss with us.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
so Papa Roach has released a new version of their hit single, the banger, the greatest of all time, the immortal, the legendary, Last Resort.
Oh, God.
And this isn't the 2020 version, which they've re-recorded with, better production. This is
it's
a bona fide, this is a bona fide, new and improved collaboration with a chap called Jerris Johnson, who...
Who looks like Chad Kroger.
He does look a bit like a modern Chad Kroger. But he's like a...
Of Nickelback fame, for anyone listening who's lucky enough not to know who that is.
Yeah, so Mr. Johnson is a...
What?
He's
Boris Johnson?
Boris.
No, Jerris. He's a TikToker.
Yes.
And he does
Great.
these kind of cool emo rap covers. Is that the word, emo rap?
Cool. No.
I gotta say, Josh, with every word you're saying, I'm just sinking further and further into the pit.
He does these kind of sad rap covers and emo type of covers of popular songs. So he's done like an emo version of Africa by Toto, which is pretty cool.
Oh, man, really?
Yeah, it's really
That's brilliant.
it's good. Like I props to him. But
My interest has suddenly increased again, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
He did a kind of new version of Last Resort, and Papa Roach liked it, and they called him up, I guess, and they got together and they created a whole new It's only 2 minutes long, but it's a whole new kind of... They call it Reloaded. It's like a remixed version of Last Resort, and I thought it was really cool, so I made these guys listen to it.
Yeah,
So
you did.
What do we think?
Okay, so can I go first here? Because,
Please.
Josh, I think we need to address this. Are you just like a glutton for punishment? Because you keep bringing this stuff, and you just... you know how we're going to react.
I think... Okay, right. This is cool. This is like the people collaborating with the artist. This is like a cultural kind of event. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm fine with that.
See
But
that aspect of it. I see that.
You're not talking about the music, though.
I also think the music. I think the music's much better than the original. I think it sounds really kind of powerful and cinematic and quite like energetic in a way that the original didn't necessarily. And the original's cool. I like it, but I think this is really. It leans into the good parts of the track a lot, and I think it's a cool kind of mashup of these two, genres. Like it's new metal that really kind of leans into the not metal bits, but does it really well. And I think it works.
Yeah, I mean, I hesitantly say I think there's going to be more of this sort of thing in the future, in a way, like the sort of, I don't know, TikTok rap generation.
Gen Z.
It's not something I particularly get. It's not something I'm really into, but I mean, this guy is clearly good at what he's doing.
Yeah.
At least, like, it's like, yeah, okay, that's like a thing. It's not my thing.
That's fair.
And I've got to say, I don't actually like the original song that much.
Fair enough.
Do you know, I'm just thinking back, just unlocked some like memories in my head. I think Papa Roach's Infest might be the first kind of hard rock, kind of metal-esque album that I ever actually heard.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I'm thinking back. My brother went through a bit of a emo-y hardcore phase, I guess, and
Yeah.
I stole that CD from him back when people had CDs. It was that and Rammstein with Firefly on it. Those are the two metal
yes,
songs I probably first ever heard.
I'm all for that.
I'd forgotten about that. Now I remember. Great.
So, Ben, Papa Roach was the first heavy rock, almost, dare I say, metal album you listened to?
Yeah, I think so.
Papa Roach were the first rock band I saw live. Well, they were at the gig.
Really?
They were at my first gig, yeah. I saw Disturbed with Papa Roach. Yeah.
That's a proper, like, 2000s gig.
Yeah, I think like 16 or 15-year-old me, I'm going to make it 1 year younger, would have absolutely loved that. I was obviously much cooler when I was 16.
I loved Disturbed when I was 15. That's when I saw
Oh, yeah.
them. And it was the best. I don't listen to Disturbed much now, but at the time, I thought they were the best thing ever. And Papa Roach, let me tell you, I wasn't that into them. They are good live. 15-year-old me had a good time. What was your first gig then? What embarrassing band did you see?
Do you know what? I'm really struggling to remember, and I honestly cannot remember. I started off seeing a lot of like small bands that I really just cannot remember any of their names. But the first big, like the first festival I ever went to, which was probably the first major gig that I went to Reading one year, and I think it might have been 2014, but I'm totally guessing that year. But I was going to see Mastodon and American Head Charge, I think, were playing as well. Nice. But then they both pulled out.
Oh,
they both pulled out, so I didn't get to see either of them. However, there is a happy ending to the story, because at the very end of the day, the band that was headlining the sort of heavier tent at Reading was an up-and-coming French band named Gojira.
Oh my god.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I got to see them, and I'd never heard of a Gojira song before I saw them. And oh my god, it like blew my mind. I came away from there just being like, I need to listen to as much Gojira as I possibly fucking can.
That's cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, they're a fucking good band. And to catch them so early when they've become one of the they were sort of one of the big bands of the last sort of 10 years, definitely.
Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, I mean, it's Reading, so it was like a fairly big crowd, but we're probably talking like a couple of hundred people, maybe. Like, they were off to the side of a main stage, like, it's Reading anyway, so it's not going to be a huge metal scene. But, yeah,
that's
cool. That was awesome.
That is cool.
Much more legit than my story.
Well, only because I've picked a story from a couple of years later.
Fair enough.
You've been selective with it. I think my first gig was Slipknot, Machine Head, and Children of Bodom.
Nice.
When I was about sort of 14 or something. Yeah, quite a good lineup, really. But I hadn't listened to Children of Bodom or Machine Head much back then, and I still haven't listened to them much now, to be honest. Although I was a big Slipknot fan and remained so for a long time.
Children of Bodom are very much a band where, like, if they come on, I like them, but I don't think I could name more than two of their songs. I imagine they must be cool live, though.
Yeah, I think they were supposed to be pretty good.
You were there, weren't you?
Yeah, well, this was 12 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I don't really remember.
The only thing I really remember about Children of Bodom is having their cover of Britney Spears' Oops, I Did It Again on my iPod. Yeah. I don't think I've ever listened to an actual song by them.
That's funny you should say that, actually, because I remember showing that to people when I was in school to be like, oh, this will get you into metal because you like this song by Britney Spears, and here's like a metal cover of it. And I do still think that actually, if someone is like... If there's someone in your life who doesn't understand metal and you want to do something for them, show them a cover of like a song they already like, and like that is a good way to get into it, isn't it?
I like how this for a moment then took a turn to almost like a medical commercial where you're like, if there's someone in your life who you need to put straight, to correct, and
someone in your life
listen to metal.
Like metal, they're probably more well adjusted than you.
Stop listening to this vile music. I think it's interesting though, because I've given a few friends who don't like metal covers of pop songs, and they don't seem to like them very much, in my experience.
Well, I mean, from a certain perspective, those bands are just sort of ruining the songs they like.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like you're taking something they already like and then like corrupting it, It's like probably better to just start with something they've got no connection to, rather than being like, hey, that thing you like? Oh, we made it like a lot worse in some ways, but... I like it more. Just throw them headfirst into Nile or something like that. I think that can be better. Not the Nile. That would be very dangerous. Don't do that. I know very little about the Nile. Well, that's all right. This isn't a podcast about great rivers. Oh, that would be a good podcast, though. I turned up to one class on river modelling once, so... What, on purpose? This is turning into the Riverface podcast. Stop. This is my plan all along. This is the Hydrology Face podcast. Well, we should maybe change the subject a little bit and talk about a band that was a big gateway band for me. Let's talk about our first album this week, Headstrung by Rash Decision. So Rash Decision are a thrash punk band from Cornwall. I say thrash punk broadly speaking, but there are sort of elements of hardcore, grindcore, fastcore, all sorts of different stuff going on there. Headstrung is their second of 3 full-length albums, and they have a ton of EPs and splits out as well. I say full-length, we're talking about 20 minutes each. Yeah. And I got into this album when we were all at university together, and it was definitely a sort of gateway to all sorts of fast, grindy stuff, not to mention a whole bunch of punk. And I became sort of
associated with this band at uni.
Yeah, can we just pause for like 1 second?
let's get some context.
Josh, do you remember when Tom got into Rash Decision?
How
Do you remember that time?
could I forget?
We all remember that time.
For our listeners, Tom and I lived together for a few years, and in the second of those 2 years, I'd regularly walk into the kitchen and open the door, and the sweet tones of Rash Decision would fill my ears as I was trying to make breakfast with a bad hangover.
Yeah, man. Well, they're a very palatable band, in my opinion. I mean, I think they have an accessible sound, you know? We'll get into the album more specifically in a minute, but I think that they do have a very palatable sound. I mean, like, I had put them on at parties, and if you're singing along to their songs at parties and stuff, they've got fucking funny lyrics.
This is the thing, yeah. I think with the samples as well, I can really, because a lot of them are... One of them's from a meme, isn't it? Like, it kind of hooks people in.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it, they have like, is it Judge Dredd? He's like, your move, creep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they do that really well, actually. Like, a lot of sort of bands in the kind of, like, underground sort of grindcore scenes use a lot of kind of samples and things. And sometimes it can be a bit like just sort of thrown in. But I think they're definitely a band where it helps like the rhythm of the music. It keeps the album moving the whole time. And with something that's like so fast as well, it's nice to have those kind of points to like break it up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, those like sound bites act as like a really good point of reference, right? Like when you're listening back to the album and just thinking about it now, I'm actually thinking that it was a RoboCop reference, that your move, creep. But when you hear that, and you like, you know the song that's coming, and then like, quite often it's like at the start of the song, you know it, and then the intro plays, and you're like, oh yeah, it's this song.
Yeah, I think they definitely do have some really sort of memorable riffs and moments in there. And because I remember when I was listening to them at university, how was it Josh described them? Josh said, this is what people who don't like metal think that metal sounds like. And I want to kind of go in here and say, Josh, what were your thoughts overall re-listening to Rash Decision?
So I thought I wasn't going to like it. I think maybe the hungover context in which I'd kind of been introduced to them originally may have tainted my opinion a bit. I really liked it. The second half of the album in particular, I thought was fantastic. I was kind of like, oh, there's one good song. And then I was like, wait, there's another good song. This is weird. Well, there can't be a third one. Oh, here we go. You know,
their songs are like just full of hooks.
Yeah,
they're really. I think these guys are definitely going to go on my maybe not super regular rotation, but I'm going to listen to them lots more actually, because songs like "Sunburn" and "Blinded by Leaves" sound really cool, and they sound quite mathy and quite. Almost want to say quite proggy in sections. It's just like there's a lot going on there which you can quite easily write off. And I think I made the same mistake that a lot of people who don't like metal do, and I feel somewhat ashamed of now, where they hear a bit that's noisy and like, oh, it's all noise. And I think I did the same thing where
because I think the end of Chin Chin Pussies, where it's like 5 or 6 like shrieks increasingly louder and drawn out, which like to a group of people like us is fucking hilarious and like really works. So somebody who doesn't like metal, they're going to listen to that and be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But there's such an element of humour in all of their music that it's sort of, they can play off doing like really wild stuff like that.
Yeah, if you're in on the joke, it's really funny, isn't it? Like it's good.
I think what you said, Josh, about how it's like almost math rock in a way. It's kind of interesting because I think the music is so heavily like distorted and insane, and like they have those weird, like the escalating screaming throughout the song and things like that. But you don't get that immediate impression of really complex music and really complex ideas going into it. But then when you actually listen to every single piece of a song, you're like, oh wait, they changed something there, and they changed something else, and now we're doing something else, and the song's only a minute long, and this has happened 10 times. It's like...
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's why, that's like hence the association with grindcore especially. Short songs kind of packed full of ideas. A genre where you can kind of throw anything into the big, into the blender, you know?
Yeah.
And
there might be a blender on this album.
Yeah. I remember, so I first saw them supporting Iron Reagan. Have you listened to those guys before?
Oh, yeah.
Once or twice, I think.
Yeah, spin-off, or side project, I should say, of the frontman for Municipal Waste.
Oh, I didn't know that. I really like Iron Reagan, another band that you have managed to implant into my brain by just playing some songs.
Are they the ones who did Miserable Failure?
Yeah.
Oh, I love Miserable Failure.
And Gore, yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw them supporting Iron Reagan, and there was just like, I remember thinking, watching them, like, oh man, these guys are really good. There's a lot of energy here. And so I went to the merch stand. I'm pretty sure I actually stole one of the albums, because it was like, it was like £1 each, or like pay how much you want. And I was like, well, I've given them a lot. I've given them a lot of money since. I can tell you that much.
Chose nothing. I will pay.
I'm just covering my tracks in case anyone from the band listens to this. Yeah, so I really enjoyed the first album. And I remember listening to the second album and having that kind of slightly like, it feels like a bit of a kind of wall of noise type thing. Which is funny to say because now, however many, what would it be, 5 years later, I know that album so well that I'm like, every single song does something different every 10 seconds or so.
Yeah.
And it's, as I said at the beginning, it mixes so many different genres. But like, even in terms of like vocal styles, you've got those sort of shrieking kind of punk vocals that are really just like out there. And then you've got kind of deep, like full metal guttural vocals. You've got the sort of the main lead singer, you've got his like sort of much more gruff and like barking punk vocals. And then you've also got kind of like moments of like gang shouts and also like high pitch and screaming and stuff.
I love the variation in the vocals. Like it's just another element. You know, I love the sound, the bass guitar, the lead guitar, the drums. They're all really well put together, and then the vocals on top of that, with like you say, with two different sort of contrasting styles. Yeah, it just gives the music so much depth. Like on first impression, like you say, you don't really think it's going to be there, but then it really is.
I think this album's definitely almost the epitome of the phrase like less is more, right? It does, because the songs are so short and it's such a short album, it has to do so many things with not that much time, and somehow managed to use all these different elements in lots of cool ways, and it's really it's like a really like
there's no fat on it.
Yeah, it's all just the pure meat.
Whereas like you compare that to sort of Metallica's most recent albums and stuff, and it's like we're talking like a 9-minute song where they repeat the same riff just over and over and over again.
Which, if you like the riff, well, you won't by the end of it. So
yeah.
I do like a bit of repetition. I think it can be cool, but I also think that
definitely,
the way they've managed to just keep it being, you know, one new thing after another new thing for the whole album is really good.
Well, I think it maintains the energy really successfully.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's much coincidence that when I got into this band was also when I got really into cycling as well. And I just found that when you start to sort of flag and you're cycling really hard, a new song comes on and it's like it's kind of dose of power, a new sort of burst of energy. And it kind of keeps going like that. I also think it's like it's really good music for back when I used to wash dishes full time for minimum wage. This was the sort of music I wanted to listen to. You know what I mean? Just something that's like kind of nihilistic, but also kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like, and is just like fast and relentless and energetic.
That sums it up, Tom. You've done it.
I've also got like a lot of memories of Rash Decision from uni, and I think my taste in music was probably a bit lighter back then. So going back into it, I had a lot of memories of Rash Decision being a lot heavier than I actually think they are now. Yeah. And definitely, I remember them being a lot more grindcore than they actually are. Yeah. Like you said, there's that influence.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. In my head, I was like, this is a grindcore album. We're doing grindcore this week. But it's definitely not. There's a lot of other elements in there.
Dare I say it, the speakers we had in our house, Tom, they weren't very good.
They just converted everything into necro sound.
That may have been why Ben and I remember it as being just like a horrible, heavy, grindy.
I still have those Those speakers are about a foot away from me under my bed. And they're still covered in beer.
Oh, God. Are those the Logitech ones?
I'll check in a minute, mate.
Yeah, no worries. I was trying to remember.
I wanted to say another point, just on their lyrics, is we were talking earlier about, before we started the podcast, about chin chin pussies, the sound, the way it starts, the guy going...
Oh my God. Yeah, and that noise, literally, even when you did it then, when I heard it, when I was re-listening to this album, as soon as I heard that, I like blinked and I was back on your sofa at Plague House, like drinking a beer and just like freezing cold. And I just was like, I've had this dream that I've got an office job and what have I done? Got a chance to relive it all again.
It's like one of those memes like, wake up, what were you talking about? The election? It's 2006, bro. We're at this.
And everything's okay.
It's 2017. We're listening to Rash Decision and throwing beer cans at each other.
What's COVID? No, it's all going.
I've got to warn them.
So, guys, favourite songs?
For me, it was quite a lot of the album. So, my best songs...
What a fucking turnaround. It only took me 5 years.
I know. This is the greatest comeback of all time, right?
This is not the response I expected from you, Josh. But...
Mine were Sunburn, Blinded by Leaves, and C asterisk asterisk NT of the litter. Oh, wait.
You can say cunt. We can say cunt, can't we?
Oh, no. Can we?
We were going to bleep flippin', so...
Cunt of the litter.
Similar songs. I really love Chin Chin Pussies. That's my favourite song, definitely.
Oh,
if
yeah.
I'll just pick
such a
one
banger.
instead of doing what we always do and naming the whole fucking album.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Chin Chin Pussies. It's just so funny. It's so catchy. I love the groovy bass intro on it. It's the most memorable song, like, definitely. And the whole, like, half the cost, twice the pain. So good.
Oh man, they're so just sing-alongable too. It's that a phrase?
Yeah, and that's the song that ends with the, like, escalating screams, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd say, yeah. I like every track on the album. Interesting that neither of you guys have mentioned Inanimate, though, which is, or Inanimate, which is one of my favourite songs. Just that, the way it kind of falls into that opening guitar riff. I want to say before we move on, the song Blinded by Leaves is actually, I asked the singer about this when I saw them at a gig once, and he told me it's about someone in their band got a bit of a leaf in their eye and had to go to an eye doctor for it because it was hurting so much. So to play us out for this section, here are the lyrics of Blinded by Leaves. Ag, it's in my eye, wrecking my cornea, blinded by eye experts, hospital queues, chlorophyll attack, botanical frack, blinded by leaves.
And it's that kind of quality throughout.
Yeah.
You'll love it or you hate it.
Yeah, man.
So up next is Thousands of Evils by Vildhjarta. Vildhjarta are a Swedish sort of gent, Meshuggah inspired prog metal band. They're from, and I think I'm pronouncing this right, Hudiksvall in Sweden. They've been around since 2005, and this is their second studio album. So their first studio album, Mastaden, was a concept album, sort of like, they said it was inspired by The Jungle Book. It's sort of this fairy tale story.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the album cover's got these little kind of animals, so it's like this little kind of fable village in the woods. But this is kind of not a concept album, as far as I'm aware. And it changes up the pace a little bit because it adds in a lot more kind of weird elements and things. And Vildhjarta were a band that they had a lot of hype going a couple of years ago, and they've kind of been a bit quiet since. So I'd be interested to hear what you think, because I really like the combination of atmospheric and kind of groove and discordant stuff going on. And I think it's got a lot of cool elements and features in this album. And I really like how, sort of as a counterpoint to the Rash decision, rather than having one song where there's necessarily like 10 different ideas, or there's lots of ideas in the song, but I mean, rather than having one song that sounds like 5, it's this one album that kind of flows into one mega track.
Yeah, no, I think on my first listen, I was very quickly like, oh, I'm into this. This is really cool. And then I think as the album went on, I felt like, I don't know, I got used to the sound in one respect, but I was sort of expecting that it to kind of change up a little bit more. It's funny that you sort of said that it does sort of, it is like one long song. Because I felt like I was noticing at points like, oh, is this a new song kind of thing?
Yeah, it doesn't really, like, it's not necessarily clear where one song ends and then begins. It does flow into one, which I think is kind of both good and bad. I think it's cool, but it does kind of damage the playlist inclusion factor a little bit.
Yeah. But I think there's probably an opportunity to talk about gent in general and those sort of associated genres. Like, you said that they have their own term, right?
So, these guys, there was a while where basically one of them had the sticker on his guitar that said Thall, so Thall, and everyone was saying that, like, it's this new subgenre of gent, and, so how gent is an onomatopoeia, because this guitar's like gent, gent, gent. They were like, Thall is this new thing based on their guitar tone, and it became this giant kind of meme, and eventually one of the band members said, oh no, it doesn't mean anything, just one of my friends mispronounced a word and it sounded like Thall, and it became like a joke in the band. But now if you go on like the Vildhjarta comments for like a song on YouTube, you see people saying Thall in capital letters. But I think it's a good point, because Vildhjarta have kind of eked out this new little subgenre with that very specific kind of high-pitched, discordant tone. So there's other bands...
Yeah, that was definitely quite a unique element, I think, for bands in this area.
Yeah.
That really high... I don't know if high-pitched is the right...
Maybe not high-pitched, but...
Yeah,
I know what you mean, though. It's not in that kind of lower, like, register of like Meshuggah, where it's like
Yeah.
bassy as fuck.
Even the
Yeah.
bassier chords and riffs and stuff still have that very kind of high-end, trebly feel.
Interesting, actually, because like listening to it in the same week as Rash Decision, I thought there was a certain amount of comparison between these two bands.
Absolutely.
In that there's a jangly sound to both bands. You know?
Yeah, I know
It's
exactly.
very
what you
much
mean.
like rattly, jangly, something being shaken about, kind of.
Yeah, I'm struggling to. I've been quiet for a little bit because I'm really struggling to put my ideas into order on this band. I like weird music. I like weird time signatures, stuff like that. But Gent is a weird one for me. I've always felt like it's music written for musicians. And it's a chance to show off how, not so much necessarily like technically complex, but things like time signatures and unusual things with the music. And I find that, and I did find this with this album, there's a lot of ideas there that I think are really cool and they sound interesting, but I feel like they would be cool as part of another song, which I'd like a lot more if there was just some nice choruses that I could enjoy.
Now, see, that's interesting because I know exactly what you mean. I don't think that I feel the need for like choruses and verses that I can sort of recognise and make sense of. But
Well, I do. I'm simple.
I didn't sing along.
but no, I mean, I would have liked it if there was something slightly more cohesive about it, because
Yeah.
I think the second song where they break into that sort of clean vocal section, and it's like a non-traditional clean metal voice, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder how they're going to kind of lean into that more in the album, and where they can take that combination of this sort of new version of Gent mixed with, as I say, something quite jangly, almost grindy, and then take that further with the sort of clean vocals. But I don't feel like it ever really got there for me, where it was like, oh wow, they've lifted their sound to this new layer. They've really done something here.
At the start of the week, I didn't really like this at all. I listened to it once and I was like, oh no, I just don't like this. It's just not for me. Throughout the week, I listened to it quite a few more times. I mean, the album's a tight 24 minutes and they get a lot of music into those 24 minutes. And throughout the week, I started to understand it a bit more, and I did start to like it a lot more. And there are some songs that I really like now, but I don't know. I think it's quite difficult to get into for me. Like Rash Decision, I not seeing the comparison, because I found Rash Decision. I put it on, I was immediately in that space, and I got it, and I liked it. And then the more I listened to it, the more I uncovered I liked it more. With this, when I first listened to it, I didn't like it. And I've started to understand it more, but I'm really on a knife edge with this. And no, but honestly, every now and again, like, you guys are saying one thing, and I'm like, yeah, actually, no, that's a good point. You know what? That was quite good about it. And then you say something else, and I go, yeah, that's the thing I hated about it. It's a really weird one for me.
The comparison to Rash Decision is only in the sense that I think like it's a slightly more grindy end of Gent, but like that's a push, to be honest. That's a stretch.
And actually, yeah, on that, the comparison, Josh already said Meshuggah, that was the comparison that was going through my head in terms of that. There's some more like grindy sections, and there were some parts that I thought this could be a Meshuggah song at some point.
Yeah.
And that's where my mind was going a lot, and I quite like Meshuggah, and I was just thinking, this kind of feels like Meshuggah light. I'd rather just listen to Meshuggah. I'm being a real dick about this, I realise, but I'm being honest.
I think it's interesting though, because Meshuggah do definitely have a very different sound, because even their songs like, maybe I'm gonna show up my lack of Meshuggah knowledge, but if you listen to like Bleed or Rational Gaze or even the newer stuff like what is it, Clockworks, it's got that energy and it's got the kind of groovy but I think what a band like Vildhjarta brings is it brings this kind of, like Tom was saying, the jangly, spooky, atmospheric kind of thing. I don't feel Meshuggah's that atmospheric, whereas I feel like this is extremely atmospheric, and I think it really leads into the spooky clean guitar and the acoustics and some of the clean vocals. And I think, Tom, actually, the point you're making earlier about how it sounds, it shares that kind of jangly feeling with Rash Decision is really good, because they both...
It's a slightly chaotic feeling, isn't there?
Oh, it's interesting. I think they kind of arrive at the same place through like very different ideas. Like,
okay, yeah.
So Rash Decision, they feel quite jangly, I think, because the bass sounds quite kind of bouncy and like energetic. It was like,
Yeah.
But with Vildhjarta, I feel like it's kind of the opposite, where it's the bass sounds very chuggy, but the jangle comes from this kind of over the top, you know, these weird strings. Like, I think there's like a harp in one bit, and there's this kind of weird guitar stuff going on.
It's sort of constantly like... I
was thinking more like in...
Just play the right notes.
I guess a bit more like in Diman, when in the kind of end of the acoustic bit before it gets into that heavier bit, it's got the sort of on the strings, for lack of a better
I mean,
description.
if there's any musicians listening to this are going to be like, man, these guys know what the fuck they're talking about.
No, they are.
Do you know what? I looked up a term. I looked up a guitar term so that I could use it this week, but I haven't had a chance yet.
What's the term?
Staccato.
Oh, that isn't that like a
Like,
go?
yeah, that kind of like stop-start kind of guitar style, because that's what I wanted the right word for it. Yeah. And I forgot to use it. So, but that's the musical term I've learned this week. And we can all try and be better.
We have one per episode.
I think the staccato guitars in Ragnar Benson are really good on this album. Don't you, Ben?
Oh, the staccato guitars, Josh. Yeah, the staccato guitars were something that I did enjoy that in that song.
Absolutely.
So we're probably pronouncing it wrong.
I'll just cut it so that it sounds like that was just natural.
No, don't, because I said I liked it, and that's a lie.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny album. I kind of feel like the whole thing with Gent, right, is I actually think it sounds pretty cool, but for me, it lives in such a cold world where almost I feel like, as I was saying with Rash Decision, I associate it with when I was working as a dishwasher, riding a bike around the city a lot and stuff. This I associate more with like
Vaping.
When vaping, or like when there's like a malfunction with my computer. And I get that sense that sending this email or trying to figure out what is wrong with the software on my computer is like harder than discovering like ancient arcane knowledge. You know what I mean? That's the sense of dread that I got from this album.
So
I prefer a slightly more familiar sense of dread.
yeah, definitely. Music kind of grounds you in a feeling and a place, doesn't it? And I know what you mean. I think that sort of computerized doom is quite.
It's like a dark robo future for a lot of gent in general. And that's not to say I didn't like it, but it just I would gravitate towards dread-filled things. But I don't know if I'd be listening to this again, to be honest.
I guess this is what we'd call controversial then.
Certainly.
Here we go. Yeah. Strap yourselves in.
Well, I guess at least you guys liked it more than episode 1's album that I brought.
God, Josh, I feel like I've upset you.
Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed listening to this album. I really did.
No, I'm sorry.
I just don't know. I think the thing is, it genuinely worked. It made me feel full of dread and horror.
I'm just kidding around. I'm not upset.
No.
I preferred it to Parkway Drive.
Yeah, fair.
Do you know what? Like, as much as I'm playing up a bit how much I didn't like it, but because there were songs I really liked. I really liked En Mort Vik Lone.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
My Swedish is probably terrible. And Mist Forstandet.
Yes, that one.
I really liked both those songs. I won't be coming back to them. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna come back and listen to it again. I'm sorry.
I liked Langst med Dan.
That sounded believable.
The second one, I thought that was cool.
For me, I think it's because my favourite bit of the album is the second half of Dimman through to middle of En Mok Vitloin. I found the repetitive discordant riffs quite comforting.
Yeah, I get that, yeah. I do like that's the thing, I do like the sort of stop, start, changing direction kind of feeling of this sort of stuff. I really like Gorgut's album Obscura.
Yeah.
Like for how it does that, which is just completely mad start to finish. And that's like 45 minutes. And then also the grindcore band Twitch. I mean, that album is about 2 minutes. But it's also got... If you like this band, you should check out those bands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would be my... Yeah.
And on the flip side also, if you like this band, and I assume you've heard of them, but if you haven't, also check out Humanity's Last Breath.
I liked that.
Yeah, that sounded very interesting.
They've got a new album coming out soon, so maybe we could tackle it later on.
Yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
Cool.
A future
But yeah,
episode.
no, overall, I enjoyed listening to it, but I don't know, it didn't quite connect with me as much as similar things connected.
That's fair. No, I can definitely see that.
But I did feel like it was unique, which is, I think, high praise in my mind.
Definitely, yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely unique. I've not heard anything that sounds similar. It's not like it felt generic or ripped off of anything else. As much as the comparison from Meshuggah is there for me a little bit, it's definitely different. I liked the clean vocals. I did like the guitar sound. It made me think too much, and I don't like that.
It is an issue. I know what you mean though, because sometimes you just want to listen to a nice album, you know. And I do feel that a lot of prog can be a bit much.
It's not background music, is it?
No, certainly not. So our final album this week is Goatsnake's Black Age Blues. So Goatsnake are a sort of doom stoner kind of band from Los Angeles, California. The album we're talking about today is Black Age Blues, which is from 2015, and it's their third full-length studio release. Goatsnake are kind of part of this big melting pot of doom stoner bands that seem to exist in this small area in LA. There's some really big names that are involved with all these guys, sort of like Acid King and Caius, and they're all sort of like similar members. There's a lot of overlap there. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I know that connection exists, but I don't know a whole lot about it, so I'm not gonna go on about it.
No, that's all right.
But yeah, Goatsnake, they're I say doom stoner. There's a lot of interesting influences going on there. A lot of like bluesy kind of country, like very Americana kind of vibes in it. I'm gonna be honest, when I picked this album, leading up to us preparing for this week, I was really worried that I was going to turn up and you guys were going to absolutely hate it, and also question why the hell I brought this to a metal podcast, because I think it's very much on that borderline. Yeah. We've talked about genres and stuff before, but you know, it was an interesting one, so I am really, really interested to hear what you guys think about it.
I wasn't sure what I was going to make of this. We occasionally differ on our opinions on certain aspects of the sort of, you know, doomer, stoner, diaspora.
Very occasionally.
Is that a term? Sure. We occasionally differ on our taste in those sorts of genres. But yeah, I know I really enjoyed this one, actually.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
When it started, everything in my brain felt like it just slowed down so much. And it was just like being carried on the waves of like riff after riff.
I know, yeah.
And quite often just the same riff repeated over and over again. But like, here's the thing. That can get really annoying when it's like Metallica wanking themselves off. But with these guys...
The second hit on Metallica this episode.
Yeah. I know. Oh, jeez. We're not getting that sponsorship.
Lars is going to be pissed.
I actually do want to do Ride the Lightning at some point, by the way, if you're listening, Lars.
You know he is.
The lawyers are drafting there.
So what I was going to say was...
Let me open a bit. Okay.
Nice. Got it. What I was going to say was what I felt like Goatsnake have done with this album is spend absolutely ages sitting around an amp and twiddling every little like dial and every little single tiny little thing on a pedal until they just get this fucking amazing guitar sound, and then it's literally just like, right, let's just fucking write some songs, you know? Because I feel like the guitar tone is consistent all the way throughout. And it's just like, oh, yeah, that feels good.
on that first track, Another River to Cross, it's like the acoustic guitar intro for about like 2 minutes, minute and a half. And then that, like you're saying, that guitar tone just like rises up out of nowhere. And it's so like thick and just brilliant.
It is, yeah. Thick is definitely the term. It's like billowing smoke, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thick with two C's. No, I know what you mean. It's. I think it's interesting. We've had three bands on today who they all have very specific and I think quite engineered styles. I don't mean that in a bad way, but they've got they know what they want to sound like, and I think probably Goatsnake are especially like that. They've got
definitely
very specific niche they're hitting, and they hit it really well.
I think that's, like we're saying, a product of it being... A lot of these musicians have a lot of different projects going on. When I was researching them, you know, there's connections all over the place, like from, let's say, Caius and Acid King to like Desert Sessions and even Queens of the Stone Age. Like, there's overlaps.
Queens of the Stone Age, that popped up in my mind actually, because I like them quite a lot, and I think you're definitely right in terms of like Americana is like the subject matter for a lot of it. As soon as I heard like the sort of first 3 minutes of the album, I was like, somebody at some point is going to say the word whiskey pretty soon. And I didn't have to wait long.
Birdsong.
Lo and behold.
Yeah, I think the Americana vibes, I don't know whether it's something I've like totally picked up on, but I mean, the album cover is like a wooden like Californian church in a desert, right?
Yeah.
And I think Pete Stahl, the vocalist, his vocals kind of gave me that like American preacher kind of vibe. Like you can imagine him behind the podium being like, you know, another river to cross.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of those sort of gospel choir elements, which like, man, I thought that was so fucking cool when it throws that in.
All right, I just gonna say the gospel choir I think really elevates this. I think without the gospel stuff. I think is it gospel? Are we right on that?
That's the word I would use, but then
it's like sounds like gospel to me.
It's what the three of us imagine to be gospel. But anyway, whatever it is, I think this would be a cool album, but it would kind of be like, nah. But when it's got this special sauce, it makes it. It goes from good
Completes that
to excellent,
package.
I think, just by adding that, because it's so well done.
Because it pulls it into that sort of Americana world even more, doesn't it?
It really gives a context,
Yeah, and it kind of, I don't know, for me it was like I was picturing sort of, those massive like willow trees you see in like Louisiana and stuff.
Yeah.
You see in pictures of Louisiana, because I've never been.
We're doing a lot of imagining now.
Yeah.
How have we not mentioned as well the harmonica, right? That puts you right there.
Yeah.
It's
Goddamn,
not often we get an album with a harmonica on it.
You don't get enough harmonica, man.
It's got this style that I think quite unusually for metal really situates it in like a time and a space, It's got that real, and I want to say kind of like southern vibe. I don't know if I'm wrong there, but I just hearing like the choir and the harmonica and whiskey, like I have this whole kind of world in my head built around these songs already.
What's the coffee, whiskey, till the cows come home?
Yeah. Oh, I loved it, It reminded me a lot of Hendrix, actually, throughout, Jimi Hendrix.
Really?
Yeah, I think particularly a song like Hey Joe, which has got some of those kind of gospel elements in it, and you can kind of hear some of that sort of style in there, I think, in this album.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting comparison. Not one that really occurred to me, but now that you say it, I can totally see it.
I guess it's interesting like how eclectic the influences on this are, and it still manages to maintain like a really strong identity, which I think is quite a challenge.
Definitely.
Like when I'm comparing it to the other albums that we've covered this week, when you look at something like Vildhjarta and Rash Decision, I think the complexities of the ideas are really evident, and I don't know if there's like complexity in the music in the same way in Goatsnake. Because I think, like Tom said, the riffs are like kind of repetitive, and it is more about that, like the whole package and the feeling and the vibe. And I think the same amount of work has gone into it. Like that's sort of what I'm getting at here. Is that it's not as though it's simpler and easier. Because they've obviously really created a very unique thing here. And when I was picking similar bands that I was like trying to think of who would I compare them to, I ended up just looking up things like Caius and Hermano. And these were all bands that were basically related to them and basically had some of the same members in them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you say about complexity, and that like the songs are kind of superficially not very complex, but you listen to a lot of metal, you listen to a lot of rock, doom, all this sort of stuff like blues that covers these sort of broad genres. But there was still something about the directions the vocals took at points. Like just sort of unexpected sort of notes or like ways to finish off parts of the chorus and verse and stuff that I was just like, oh, I haven't really heard that before. And I mean, I just feel like the whole album was like such a pleasure to listen to that, I mean, interesting that you thought I wasn't going to like it, because out of all the albums we've looked at so far that I haven't listened to before, this is the one I've listened to the most, kind of like in my free time, without sort of going like, what do I have to say about this, but really just being like, I just want to put that on just to hear that fucking meaty guitar sound and those sort of like amazing like vocals. I
really thought you were going to say it was boring and repetitive and didn't belong sort of on a heavy metal podcast. I thought I was going to get grilled this week over this. But,
no, not at all.
Maybe that's why I was so aggressive when we talked about Josh's choice. I don't know.
You had to deliver the pain, so they got to the.
But I mean, it's interesting because I think like while there's obviously a repetitive element to it. And I can see why you would think that I wouldn't like that. But I think a lot of... You'll see in the album that I choose next week, I think that a lot of black metal has very long, drawn-out songs that are kind of superficially repetitive, that are like good, not because they're offering you something fresh every 10 seconds like a grindcore song, but because they're like almost like hypnotizing you.
Yeah, I think it's the strength of the atmosphere for me that really carries me through the repetitive bits, because they do use the same riffs a lot, but it's got such a strong it's such a strong situated atmosphere. You can really feel like the environment in which you imagine the music was kind of recorded, right? And it really has a strong feeling beyond just the sound for me.
I want to fucking listen to this when I go camping and just be like drinking black coffee and like chopping wood. You know what I mean?
So the next time I'm in the bayou, this will be blasting.
Yeah, definitely. And we touched on it in the Vildhjarta section. I mean, this is so sing-a-longer ball too, and that's why I like putting it on. I like listening to this while I'm driving.
For sure.
Like just.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, I can't wait until fucking live music starts up in general, but particularly I'm really looking forward to going to see bands like this, where you can just sort of take a big lungful of air and just like belt out some lyrics, So yeah, all in all, I thought like a really fucking strong album.
Yeah, same.
So I'm interested to know what you guys would say were your favourite songs off the album.
So for me, I think it was either, probably both, I want to say, Another River to Cross and Jimmy's Gone. I think there were some really cool bits. I think Jimmy's Gone in particular was excellent. It did everything right, you know. It's all the best bit of the album combined into a single song, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I really liked the choir on that as well. Or gospel, whatever we're saying.
Yeah, we're going to go gospel choir.
Okay, yeah, we'll use both. I really liked the gospel choir on that.
Now we've got options.
Gospel choir face.
Yeah, funny enough, actually, Josh, I had the exact same 2 songs written down. I feel like A River to Cross was just such a great break into the album. Really just went with it as soon as it started.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, I felt like Jimmy's Gone is sort of the pinnacle of what they're doing with the sound. Yeah, really good. Yeah, I liked sort of almost everything on the album.
My choices are different, actually. I picked Elevated Man.
Oh, really?
Definitely my favourite track.
It's one of their most popular tracks on Spotify as well, isn't it? Elevated Man.
Yeah, and generally when I listen to this band, I do tend to go for their top tracks. There are some bands that I do go album by album. This isn't one that I don't think I've ever listened to one of their albums start to finish until this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, Elevated Man and Coffee and Whiskey being 2 of their most popular songs off the album. They're the ones that are the most catchy. They're the ones that stick in my head the most. I'd definitely say their other album, Dog Days. I think it's I and Dog Days. It's like a dual release sort of thing.
Oh, cool.
That's a really good album as well. So if you want some more, check that out because it's got just as many catchy songs in it.
I have actually, I've listened around a little bit and I felt like there was some cool stuff on their other bits, but I want to listen to the album because I get the sense that this is a band that very much goes for a guitar tone per album and just does a bunch of stuff with it.
That's why I had a bit of a debate with myself whether to pick this album or Dog Days, and I picked this one because I think it nails that country Americana kind of vibe better than the other one. They're both really good albums, but I think this one is that's Goatsnake to me.
Yeah, man, very good. Liked it a lot.
So that was Rash Decision with their album Headstrung. We had Vildhjarta with Thousands of Evils and Goatsnake with Black Age Blues. Guys, how do you feel?
Good.
Those are 3 really interesting bands, I thought. I enjoyed listening to all of it this week. And also 3 sort of relatively underground bands that your average metal listener might not know about. So that was cool as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I had to know one of the albums because I picked it, but I wasn't, I'd never really listened to either of those other albums all the way through.
Yeah.
And it was, really interesting, really enjoyable.
Absolutely. I think I discovered a lot of music today, and I thought it was, honestly, it was all really good, and I was really happy.
Yeah,
I think we really ran the gamut of the different genres here, and it was cool, it was all good.
I mean, there is just so much music out there.
Yeah, do you know what? I kind of feel like we've got 3 very different albums there, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. It's almost like we had Rash Decision, which to me is kind of like a kebab on the way home,
Yeah.
It's really satisfying and really delicious, but maybe you wouldn't take a girl there on a first date.
Yeah.
And then you had Vildhjarta, which to me was a really fancy restaurant, but if I take a girl there on a first date, she might think I'm a bit wanky and a bit pretentious.
Whereas Goatsnake is America's too far to go on a first date.
I tried to take a girl I was seeing on Hinge to a protest for a date once.
What the hell? Which protest? It wasn't a bad one, was it?
No. Yes, it was the anti-something good protest. No, it was the when Boris was trying to prorogue Parliament.
Vaguely.
Remember back when those were our biggest problems? Yeah, this is 2019. And I was like, hey, so drinks are cool tonight. You want to go to this protest?
Well, what did she say? How did it go?
She said she didn't like crowds, so we didn't go. Well, I went. I said I went.
How you were just well, I'm going, so...
Ditched her and just went.
Well, I mean, we went up afterwards, but I was like, I'm defending democracy today, and you can't fucking stop me. I'm not going.
Sorry, babe, I've got democracy to defend.
How bad would it be if I was like, hey, babe, you want to go to this protest? And she was like, no. And then I was like, yeah, it was lame anyway.
Yeah, no,
you're right, Josh. I respect you more.
A man of your principles.
Yeah.
Decent.
And also, I just want to point out, Parliament in the end didn't get prorogued, so, I mean, you're welcome, democracy.
Damn. Yeah. Well, I'll bear that in mind if we're ever allowed to date anyone again. If that ever becomes illegal again.
Legal.
Alright, let me record that. If that ever becomes illegal.
The difference between legal and illegal is quite important, actually.
It's just a letter.
It's an important letter.
So next week, episode 4, we're doing something a little bit different, right?
Yeah. Next week, we're going to do our first genre episode. This is going to be a black metal episode. But I should say up front, this is not necessarily like a 101 of the genre or a
We are
history
already
of the genre.
prefacing this with a disclaimer before we've even done the episode.
We're going to stick to the the structure of the Metal Face podcast, and we're each going to bring one of our favourite black metal albums, and hopefully talk a little bit about the genre as well.
Absolutely.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, look at us, trying something different.
Different things.
So which 3 black metal albums are we going to be talking about next week?
Next week, we're going to be talking about Dark Throne's A Blaze in the Northern Sky.
I'm going to be bringing The Well of Stars by Onirism, which are, if I understand correctly, a one-man solo project.
Okay. Yeah, I've not heard of them before.
They're cool.
I'm interested. And yeah, I'm going for something big, something popular right now. I'm bringing Dimmu Borgir's Eonian, their newest album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to listen to
symphonic.
that, so that would be cool.
All right, guys. I think that's a wrap. That's episode 3 of the Metal Face podcast.
Absolutely.
Episode 3 of the Metal Face podcast.
We are speeding through
did
them.
it.
We are flying ahead.
Yeah, and I will see you guys next week for some black metal goodness. Currently my favourite genre, I would say. My most listened to genre at the moment, so
Oh, really?
I'm looking forward to not shutting up about that.
It's a shame. It's a shame that it's not going to be a video-based podcast because we're going to be in corpse paint. So.
Yes. Well,
Well,
yes.
I will see you guys next week. I look forward to a whole week of listening to music this week.
Hell yeah!
Excellent.
Talk to you next week.
See you next week.
Have a good week. That was weak. That was the Metal Face Podcast. Go follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for Season and Mist, Character Anger, and Separation for their music in the intro. And thank you to Johnny Peterson for transition music throughout. Go check out his projects at Heads for the Dead, Massacre, Wormvale, and Wombat. And most importantly, thank you for listening. Take it easy, and hail Satan.
Transition.
I'm going to get another drink.
Yeah, I'm going to stretch my leg.
Stretch your leg.
No, my
Josh has a
my-
peg leg now.
Hop around.
my desk in my room is too short, basically, and I have to kind of hunch over, and it's really hurting
my
my back,
God.
so I'm just going to walk around a bit.
Okay, you need to get a new desk.